everybody, and welcome to our weekly roundup of blockchain gaming news. Today is Friday, 20th of September. I'm your host, Jenny Jordan. With me, as ever, is John Jordan. Hi, John. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good.
Right, so I am wearing my lovely comfy Mocaverse hoodie today due to an announcement this week with Mocaverse announcing a partnership with Magic Eden, let's get this right, to create an NFT launchpad exclusively to the Moca network and its Moca holders, and it will also bring sort of utility to the Moca coin, which will be integrated as a sort of primary currency on the launchpad. So, and you are wearing your Web3 Gaming's inevitable. Is it still? Is that a bit of an old slogan now?
You could take it apart in many different ways, but I'll still wear that.
That's all you have to say today. Good. I don't know how we'll judge that. All right. So Flappy Bird is back. Flappy Bird is back. What? Did you hear that? Yeah. Crazy, addictive mobile game, Flappy Bird. So it's relaunching in the form of a Telegram game. However, the sort of initial founder hasn't got anything to do with it, and it's not like crypto. He's made clear on Twitter. Right. So what does this mean to the industry, John? Quite a few, actually. Sort of in the context of, we had what did we have? We had D20 Labs also announcing like a Royal Nutz Poker game based on an old game. We've had Crypto Kitties coming out with their. So, there's a lot of sort of riding on old glory kind of thing in a way. So tell us about Flappy Bird. How does this impact the industry, and is this something to be excited about?
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily impacts the industry. One interesting thing is it has got quite a lot of just general press coverage. So just general game sites have been covering it. Generally, they've sort of taken the view Flappy Bird's back, but these terrible crypto people have sort of almost like stolen it. That seems to be sort of one of these sort of underpinnings. So they've not gone really heavy anti-crypto, but there is this whole sort of, there's a sort of subtext of anti-crypto, some of them make it more explicit than others, obviously. But there has been, actually, some of the more interesting analysis has been around the sort of IP. So the whole story is actually quite a complex one. I wouldn't say I fully sort of gone into all the nitty gritty of it. But Flappy Bird, for those who forget, it came out on mobile in 2013 from this sort of single developer out of Vietnam, and it was just a very very hardcore game, and it sort of became this sort of weird. Back then, you could still do this sort of thing where mobile games just popped out of nowhere and everyone just started playing them, and it was like a super hardcore game, and so it was really hard to get a good score. So it was one of those games that people just sort of love showing off their skill on, and it was in some ways a very pure game. As far as I remember, there was no in-app purchases. I think there was some ads in there, but that was about it. It was just a real sort of hardcore back to basics, tap and get your little bird to fly, the media started really covering it really heavily. This viral game, it was when virality on social media was a big thing as well. And this poor guy, I think this developer was a bit taken aback by, he just did it as an indie project, So he was getting phoned up by, or he was getting contacted by, New York Times and stuff. And so he just wasn't sort of, prepared for that. And so very quickly he took it off the app stores. And he sort of gave quite a confused sort of, it's too addictive, and it's sort of, I can't sleep at night for all the sort of hassle I'm getting. And so I think there's more to do with his sort of mental health. And he was just like, whoa, this is, suppose he was making 50 grand a day on ads just from that. But clearly it became sort of a wider issue. So the meme became, this game's so addictive, the guy's taking it down from the app stores. And then it sort of spun into this thing where you couldn't download it, but if you had the game, you could still play it. So people were selling their iPhones with the game on it for ridiculous sums of money. I mean, again, that was a bit of a meme sort of thing, but I think it did happen. So just one of these sort of weird phenomenons. But one of the interesting things that the blockchain, this reinvention has sort of come out and it was known at the time. Actually, there was a French developer called his pseudonym was Keck, and he had a game called Poiri versus the Cactuses. And in Flappy Bird you have this sort of yellow Flappy Bird and you're going between pipes. In his game you're this not quite a yellow bird but like that, and you're going between cactuses. So there became this sort of not quite a backlash, but people pointing out that this Flappy Bird was very similar to this Poiri cactus game. So I think there may have been a reason the other guy took it down, because he was making a lot of money and it wasn't very clear that he owned who owned the IP or anything like that. Anyway, Flappy Bird did come back in 2014 with Amazon. So back when Amazon was like doing the Amazon App Store for mobile devices, and actually people forget Amazon was doing its own phones back then, didn't work out. But so it did come back, but the sort of phenomenon was sort of lost for that guy, a bit like Mr. Rubik's and his Rubik's Cube. Everyone copied it. There were Flappy Bird clones everywhere. There was a trademark, interestingly, and that sort of comes back to this story now. So someone did file a trademark for Flappy Bird, presumably this guy, maybe not, I don't know, maybe when Amazon did it for him or whatever. But the reason that Flappy Bird has come back now, 10 years on, is because the trademark lapsed after 10 years. So someone got a trademark from it, and then it lapsed, and no one, paid for it to be renewed. So there'd been some guys, clearly, who'd been watching this, and they bought the trademark when it lapsed, and then the trademark has passed through 2 other companies to end up being bought by these people who now own it, called the Flappy Bird Foundation. So that they are the people who own the trademark to Flappy Bird and all the sort of legal rights to it. And they're the guys who have reborn it now as a Telegram game. And, as we discussed many times, Telegram mini games are now sort of, a very big thing, because Telegram's growing. It has this TON blockchain attached to it, so you can, attach crypto sort of assets to these games fairly easily. Pretty much everyone is now doing Telegram mini games, because there's a billion people, supposedly 1 billion accounts on Telegram. A lot of them are bots, clearly, but even like Binance announced a mini game this week. So everyone's doing it. So, and it's just because it's such a simple game, it works really well for Telegram, I think. So from a gameplay point of view, it's sort of good. And I'm not a big Flappy Bird fan. I'm rubbish at it. But it's a really good implementation. It's not as simple as the original one. It has these sort of extra sort of features and modes and all this sort of stuff. So I think if you just want to play Flappy Birds, it's pretty good. Obviously, they're going to do a token launch and all. There's a Flappy token coming, so quite how that works out. Not quite sure how that sort of plays out in the big scheme of things. Personally, I'm on the Telegram side. I'm not quite sure it's going to pan out sustainably for everyone. But I think as relaunches go, I think they've done sort of quite a good job on the game. They've got this guy Keck, who was originally part of who did the Piao Cactus game. He's quite into it, so he's been sort of helping it out as a sort of a design sort of a visionary on that. So all in all, I think it's sort of quite an interesting resurrection for the Flappy Bird brand. They are going to be bringing it to mobile and other browser games in 2025. So I think this original version was published by the Notcoin people, who are big on Telegram, and that's why they've taken that crypto route first, because obviously they've got a bunch of money and they're publishing games now. So I guess we'll see if the versions that launch in 2025 are crypto enabled or not. I guess that would be an interesting thing. Or whether this sort of initial Telegram thing is just like an initial sort of a part of the sort of relaunch of the brand, and whether it just goes wider. I think they will probably launch it as a Web 2 game and maybe with some Web 3 interface over time, but we'll sort of see how that plays out.
Yeah, so let's move on. Talk about Ronin. Ronin announced this week that real life sim RPG Tatsumeeko is migrating from Solana and even potentially Immutable, I think, to Ronin. Not quite sure what was live on Immutable, if anything, but anyway, it's coming to Ronin, and this is a big deal. It expands obviously the ecosystem, but it's not. It doesn't. It's very similar to the games that are already on Ronin in a way. So not sort of a big, what would you say? A big change in kind of Ronin's direction, I suppose, in what games and what gamers it tries to appeal to. It's still very much sort of Asia focused and yeah.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the one thing about I don't never know how you pronounce it. Tatsumeeko, I suppose, is they were a proper project before sort of blockchain. So they started out as they were one of the first sort of games within Discord. So I think in 2016 or it's a few years ago now. When Discord started out, it's obviously like a communication sort of social channels. But you can do sort of bots within that as well. So you can do sort of coding stuff. So they basically built out a sort of an RPG within Discord. So not very graphical. And they actually built out a platform. So I don't know if these figures are exactly correct, but they claimed something like, I'm trying to think, they claimed like 1.5 million channels or something. I mean, it was an enormous number. Millions of sort of people had interacted with these sort of. I mean, is it not so much a game, an interactive sort of society sort of thing. So when blockchain came along, it sort of seemed to make sense that these guys already had sort of communities using their sort of assets and stuff. And so they in a sense they timed it. They timed it poorly in the sense they were one of the first sort of games on Solana when Solana was really sort of kicking off and everyone was announcing on Solana. And so they have launched some NFTs. They've been there since the last couple of years, and they have done some closed testing. So I think they're sort of further along than people think. As you say, I'm not quite sure where the immutable bit came in, but maybe they were looking at that at some point as well. And actually, so I don't think this is a major game coming to Ronin, but I guess I would say it's. For this one, it's just another sort of sense that Ronin sort of has the momentum where it's sort of has its ability to pick up some of these fairly well-known games. It's not a AAA game clearly, but it's as you say, it plays into sort of where Ronin seems to think its sweet spot is, which is Asian developers doing sort of pixel graphic sort of RPGs. So I think that and we'll come on to this maybe a little bit later, but I do kind of wonder a little bit with Ronin that it's only got like 20 games on it at the moment because it's a permission blockchain, so you can't just rock up and launch your blockchain on Ronin. You have to go through Sky Mavis. But I think they, from an outsider, not being Asian and not being playing a lot of MMORPGs, I do wonder if they got too many of them. I mean, they might just say, well, they're all. This one's a little bit different from this one because of these reasons. But I did kind of think that, to a degree, there's not so many people playing these games that the more you add in there, the sort of more you're cannibalizing your audience because those sort of games are pretty heavy duty on time. So you really only play one MMORPG. So if you're playing Pixels, you're probably not playing Tatsumeeko. And those two games, I think, are actually quite sort of similar. Obviously, one's Western, one's Asian. But, so I guess it's. As I say, we'll talk maybe a bit more about Ronin later, but I do think in their big strategy at the moment there's some obvious sort of genres that they are lacking, and that may be because they can't do commercial deals with those developers, or it may be because they are going to announce those, sort of a later date. We'll sort of have to wait and see.
Or it could be that they're just taking the route of sort of going down with what they know work well and what they know they can actually add value to, they help with the design of tokenomics and stuff like that. So that's where they know they can actually add, that they can actually assist, and they know what they're talking about. Whereas,
no, maybe. I mean, I think that maybe I would wonder if that's just a bit more that's sort of more implicit. So they've my fear would be that they've ended up a little bit in a comfortable position where they sort of know what their audience is, and they're just sort of going, "Oh, we'll get more of those games that our audience likes." My thinking at the moment, and sort of for the last really couple of weeks, is really that every blockchain should get rid of 90% of the games on there. I mean, obviously most of them can't because they're permission, but I think if Ronin had 4 games rather than 20 games, then that would be a lot better for the ecosystem, because you basically I don't think many people on Ronin would like, I'm not going on Ronin because it's not got the games that I like. I think as soon as you end up with 20 games and you've sort of spread your audience, you've I just find it personally. There's only so many hours you can play these games, and if one comes in, then you're sort of swapping out another one. I do. I think the other thing is for some, for people who are very obviously positive about blockchain, they just kind of think blockchain games are going to win, so we just sort of want more of them. If we get more of them now in the long term, that's going to be good because blockchain games are really going to be valuable. I'm becoming much more to the thinking that there's too many blockchain games, and what we need is to prove some of them are successful. We've sort of got Pixels, but that's really the only sort of one we've got at that level. And I would quite like to be a few more sort of games at 500,000 to 1 million daily active users. And I think to do that, you sort of have to a little bit sort of focus your audience on doing it. So that's sort of a little bit yeah.
Well, as we're talking about Sky Movies, we might just as well dive into the other news that's been in the headlines this week, which is they've announced their first 7 games in the cohort joining Ronin Forge, the program that they announced, I think, a couple of months back. So this is like new games that are already in existence. I think they kind of announced for sort of early stage development games. They'll be getting a grant of $50,000 as they come onto Ronin and start building, and then if they are successful and proving to be working, then they can get a bigger grant of $500,000. And also more sort of technical support, and they'll I guess they get like a higher status as kind of partner game or something like that. And those, shall I go through the list of those games? Cambria, which has been launching on Blast, and they'll remain on Blast, so they're just expanding to Ronin. We've got Infomon. It's a Pokemon-inspired social file game with AI kind of driven pets. Corora Beasts, which I think was an Arbitrum, wasn't it? That's migrating over to Ronin. Say that again.
It was on Treasure.
On Treasure, yes. Got Lost Odyssey, like a 5-time strategy game, and Party Icons, which I'd never heard of before, a community-focused mobile party game. Extreme Verse. And we got Pixel Heroes Adventure, which I did hear about before, mobile MMORPG coming from Immutable. So those are the 7 games. Is that anything to be excited about then?
I mean, it goes back to a similar point. I think of those games, Cambria, obviously you heard of, and I think that's the sort of standout one that it is. But it's a sort of a... Blast is a very degen sort of blockchain L2 based. The guys who did Blur, Marketplace, very much about yield and all that sort of stuff, and basically hasn't worked out. So it was one of the first to do sort of yield farming and NFT selling farming for the Blur token, and the people who love that sort of stuff love it, but they love it generally because they make money, and if they don't make money, they it's not something they go for, and Blast sort of burned through its capital, social capital and actual crypto capital quite quickly, and I think now is pretty moribund. I think Cambria, and I've not played it, was interesting though. It's a wagering game, so it's a PvP sort of game where people basically, I put money in the pot, you put money in the pot, and the winner sort of wins the pot. So I think a certain type of people like that. DGen people really like it, and it was successful in that audience, but I don't think that's a pretty sort of capped audience. So the good thing about having that on Ronin is Ronin doesn't have those sort of games. I mean, so that's at least whether it's successful or not, I don't know, but it may attract a different audience, or it may sort of engage their existing audience in a different way, because they just don't have anything like that before. A lot of the other games, as you say, I mean, I'd heard of Koro Beasts, which is a Pokemon sort of thing. I don't think really stands out very much. A lot of the other ones not heard of. And as I say, a lot, we have, looking there, we have 2 Pokemon-inspired collection games.
Yeah.
We have 1 Pixel MMORPG, which we want to discuss. We have Last Odyssey, so again, a mobile strategy game, which, we'll see on that one. Party Icons and Extreme Verse I'd not really heard of. Those are, they potentially are interesting sort of projects, but quite big sort of projects. I mean, at least they're sort of shooters, which Ronin doesn't have a lot of, but they are sort of the sort of shooters that sort of cartoon sort of shooters, which sort of shooter fans don't like. So those type of shooters tend not to engage very well because they're we'll see. They talk about extraction shooting, which is a bit more of a hardcore mechanic. So we'll wait and see. But for me, I was just a little bit like, we're getting more of the same here for Axie, and the other weird thing is that I think it shows that this is Forge is more like an incubation project. Really, you're only getting 50 grand, which is not much in the scheme of things. So these sort of games some of them are fairly established, and I think it sort of shows the lack of options elsewhere in the blockchain space. That those sort of these are sort of bigger projects than I thought would come in. I thought maybe you get some more sort of experimental stuff. These are not experimental games. These are sort of quite supposedly well worked out games, I think, with decent dev teams. So obviously from Ronin's point of view, it's great because they say we're the only place where these people are coming. And as I wrote in my Substack yesterday, if I was a blockchain game developer, I'd probably be applying for Ronin Forge. So be careful. Kind of, it depends on sort of where you are. But I just I'm not quite so sure that how much more it brings to Ronin. If my general view is 20 games is too many, then adding games doesn't really help unless those games really stand out.
Yeah. Now, can you talk us through a little bit about the data coming from Mythical Games this week regarding NFL Rivals and its in-app marketplace launched a year ago.
Yeah.
A couple of months following the game's soft launch, and so it's seen to have boosted trading by 45%, but not only, it's also sort of brought people into the web-based marketplace. So, can you talk us through a little bit about the numbers there and what Mythical has said?
Yeah, I mean, so this is sort of we've discussed NFL Rivals many times. It's a American football game running through the app stores, launched a year ago with its app marketplace. I guess over the year, and they do point this out in the sort of article, that they've gone through, I think it's like four different sort of updates to the marketplace. So the in-app marketplace works. So previously you had the web-based marketplace that if you used your email to sign in on, you could you could buy things on the web-based marketplace and they'd show up in the game, but you couldn't buy them in the game. Then they had the in-app in-game marketplace for the first time. Obviously, Apple and Google take their 30%, so it's more expensive to do it that way, but that's obviously more convenient for most people. And then they've sort of updated these things where you could do sort of quick sales, so you could sell individual NFTs you had. Effectively, you'd be selling them
quick trade, I think they call it feature.
Yeah, quick trade. And then they sort of added the marketplace, so you sort of see this. You get the same marketplace in the app as you do on the website, but it's still more expensive because of Apple and Google. And then the last thing they added was quick swaps. And quick swaps is where you bundle a whole bunch of your assets together to buy sort of a more expensive one. So generally in these sort of games, you end up with a lot of NFTs that's all quite low value, maybe a couple of dollars each. And you end up with quite a lot of those, and you can't really sell them because there's not any liquidity on them because everyone's sort of getting those same NFTs. But in this case, you can like bundle up 10 of your $1 NFTs and buy sort of a $10 better NFT. So each of those has sort of had an impact, and certainly when we spoke to John Linden, the CEO, he's very bullish on quick swaps. Is that right? Quick trades. Yeah, sorry. Quick trades. Get it right. So he's very keen on basically people playing games. They've got a bunch of low level stuff they don't want, and they can just want to swap it out. And his big vision is people will be doing this on the Mythos chain across lots of games. So you'll have you've been playing the NFL Rivals, you've had enough of that, and you want to swap everything out, and you want to buy a supercar in Nitro Nation or whatever other Pixel, Pudgy Penguins, whatever their next game is. So you basically sell your entire NFT collection off and buy into the next collection, and that's really that sort of that ease of interoperability of assets is something that really people have see as a big thing for blockchain games. So in a sense, it's not it's not a surprise that this is that having an in-app marketplace and making it more sort of liquid has improved trading. I guess some of the things that maybe was are more significant is that as people get into how this marketplace works in the app, then you see them going to the web interface and trading there, which is more complex to do because you're trading individual assets. Well, you can do the quick swaps there as well, I think. But it's a bit. It's from a UI point of view, it's more complex, but it's much cheaper because you don't pay the 30% Apple and Google tax. And actually, you also Mythical can sort of stiff you on some of the prices in the app as well, or you just get much cleaner liquidity and pricing in the web app. So they're seeing people starting off, the sort of power users start off in the app and get used to sort of trading these NFTs. They're not called NFTs; they're just called cards. And then they go into the website, and then they really start sort of becoming sort of power users. So I guess that's the interesting sort of transition. I think, as you said, the headline was 45% more trading volume as they've added this sort of in-app marketplace, which is, granted, this is probably on a fairly small number of people, probably tens of thousands of people interacting with the assets. But 45%, if you go to any game developer and say we're going to increase your sales by 45%, then they're pretty happy. Obviously, this isn't sales; this is market volume, and but Mythical gets 14% of that. So if you think sort of Mythical's trading revenue is increased by 7%, I mean that's not quite as big as obviously 45%, but you start talking about sort of you can start talking about millions of dollars, and suddenly 7% can start to be substantial. So I wouldn't overplay it, sort of telling us what we thought would happen. But sort of good to see them putting out numbers, and obviously for them, they want to, a bit like Ronin saying we're the place to go for games. Mythical is now making that sort of statement to people as well. So we expect they obviously at the moment most of their games are being developed by them. No, most of the games on Mythos chain are being developed by Mythical Games, but their vision has always been to be the place where everyone goes to develop their game. So that's what they're trying to sort of build out there. That's the sort of marketing they're trying to build out with these sort of posts.
Yeah. Right. So I've seen a handful of new games being announced as well this week. One of them we've mentioned already, which is Zynga's X-Web3 team D20 Labs, which only sort of unveiled themselves earlier this month. Been working on the Sugartown platform, and now they've announced poker game Royal Nutz Poker Club. Do you want to talk about that and how that sort of weaves into the Aura NFTs and how they sort of bring a utility to Sugartown?
Obviously, the sort of background is Zynga. I think Zynga's first game even was Zynga Poker. So Zynga Poker has been going for goodness knows how many, I can't remember, 10, 15, whatever years. So a social casino game, as they say. So you put money into it to buy in-game chips. You can't take money out of it. So it's purely, it's not gambling, they're gambling licenses, but very successful. So Zynga Poker, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but was doing $100 million of revenue a year on browser and mobile. So sort of one of the big sort of poker games. So Zynga totally knows poker. And obviously this company D20 has basically bought themselves out of Zynga. We don't quite know the reasons why that was the case. They weren't moving very quickly within Zynga, and I imagine that's something to do with Zynga being owned by Zynga being a public company, being part of Take-Two, which is a public company, and just lawyers in the US, obviously very risk averse about that sort of stuff. So probably makes sense for them in the long term to be able to move quicker. But I hadn't really thought about them doing a poker sort of game, so maybe that's my lack of imagination. The interesting thing about it is, despite being on the blockchain, it is a social casino game. So you sort of you put money in, but you can't directly take money out, even though there's sort of crypto blockchain in there. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. It seems like there's going to be sponsored tournaments. So someone will sponsor a tournament. Could maybe be, if we're in crypto, could be with NFTs or I don't know, Mocha coins or something, or whatever it is. I don't know the legals about that. I don't know, but basically, probably you're not directly winning money from playing poker. You're playing poker, getting the sort of their in-game fake money, ending up on a leaderboard, and the top 5 people win something like that. So it looks like they're doing it that way. They're also engaging with other communities. So the first one they're doing is with Ape Coin. So the Ape DAO, the Bored Ape people have their own coin, been around for a while, Ape Coin, and they're doing their own chain as well. So not quite. I don't think it won't be on their chain, but I assume it will be. People with ape assets will be sort of coming into play. So, maybe not the most sort of exciting sort of game because people know poker or don't know poker, but lots of people sort of like poker and plays into sort of degen sort of crypto crowd tend to like poker. So we'll see how it goes.
The first stage is roll it out to Aura NFT holders, isn't it? The Aura NFTs are sort of integrated on the Sugartown. It's part of the kind of Sugartown platform.
Yeah, so but whether this is part of Sugartown or not, I guess it probably will be through Sugartown, which is their platform for having lots of games within there. Basically, what you do is you stake your Aura NFT, and that generates energy for you, and then you use that up. I think when they probably go live, you can probably buy energy, or there's ways of getting energy. But obviously, having an NFT is going to give you more energy. So that's in the end, they're going to sort of drive people to buy those NFTs to do that.
Yeah.
But I think the whole point of D20 Labs and the whole point of Sugartown is to be a platform for many games. So I think this is just sort of probably the sort of starting point. And I think they have loads of old Zynga IP that they probably still have the licenses to use, like Mountain Goat and all that sort of stuff.
Right, another game that's launched this week is AI-driven Web3. It's from the platform Synex, which is an AI-driven sort of Web3. It's sort of about like a finance. I'm not exactly sure actually what the platform is doing. Maybe you can tell me a bit more about that. But they have launched SynQuest on Telegram, which is kind of a game with trivia questions about. You tell us more, John. Why don't you tell us, because you've been playing it?
Yeah. So quite what Synex are. We'll have to sort of discuss. So like as I say, everyone launches these Telegram games. So they've launched this very simple Telegram game, and basically, I mean, they call it a trivia game, but the trivia is very, it's very basic. Multiple choice. What's the capital of France, or what's the highest mountain? But then they throw in stuff like, is crypto going to go up or down today? Or they throw in ones that there's no right answer to, and then there's I can't remember what it's called now. There's one that's obviously been sort of maybe like a marketing thing. There's a real world asset, is it called Polytrade? It's called. So they keep throwing in questions about Polytrade, which is to educate you about Polytrade and maybe go and click through or something. So obviously they're playing with different ideas. So they're playing with like saying it's trivia, and you win points for right answers. But obviously they're doing the other kind of funny stuff is they'll say something like, how much of your net worth is in stock or something. So they're trying to build up, by these questions, a sort of an idea about you as a player, and obviously that's sort of interesting for potentially for advertisers. As you say, the company behind it is sort of looks like it's building some sort of AI crowdsourced platform around sort of financial information and stocks and stuff. It's not that bit doesn't seem to be clear. So this game seems to be a sort of a UA funnel into that sort of stuff. So
not only that, they are collecting data through this game to what's it called, like contribute to their data source, which is sort of learning and teaching their LLMs about kind of like player sentiment in the financial sector or something like that. And I'm not exactly sure.
At the moment, the data would not be useful. It's just not. It's not. It's just so basic that
Okay. Anyway, it's out there. It's out there this week. The third game we have focused a little bit on is coming from Parallel Studios, which has already got Parallel. Parallel. It's called TCG, trading card game. That was their flagship game. And then they're also working on Colony, which is sort of a more AI heavy game that's coming to Solana in 2025. And now they have announced what's it called? Tau Ceti. Ceti? I don't know how you say it.
Ceti, I think.
Ceti, which is a third-person shooter on bases L3, B3. B3 is called. It's an L3 built on base.
Yeah.
So it's sort of spreading out
Well,
across many titles. This is should be emphasized, built with a third party studio as well. We don't know which developer it is, but yeah. So
well,
I'll go to them.
shall I repeat my current thinking that 90% of blockchain? I mean,
too many.
it's just. I mean, who knows? Maybe this will be a good game. I just kind of think, you want to focus. If I'm a massive parallel fan, and there are some out there. I mean, didn't play the sort of trading card game, but it was sort of quite highly regarded. You need to focus your players and your liquidity and their time into as few things as possible. And I think when they announced Colony, it's like an AI sim thing that was sort of really caught the attention of the AI type stuff, and and then to go, oh, we're going to do a third person shooter. It's just like, it doesn't matter really that they're not doing it themselves. Obviously, having to pay someone else to do it. How to make a really good third person shooter it takes years and years and years. Anyone these days, an AI can make a third person shooter probably. But to make a really good one that, people want to play and has, probably needs to be, have a lot of social sort of, sort of team based assets, or how you're going to sort of run that to get retention and obviously monetize it. It's just, we don't know enough about this project to really, we've just seen some sort of video of it. And to me, it just looked very very sort of basic. Like it didn't. If you're into third person shooters, it didn't. Why is this one going to stand out? It just didn't. I think just everyone needs to look at them. Everyone needs to look at themselves and do what can we focus on. I think at this point in time, and I think just adding new stuff. Obviously, you get a nice hit. Everyone's like, "Oh wow, cool new game," and it's using existing assets. So at least they're not trying to sell new assets into it at the moment. So it's using the Prime. It will use the Prime token and the parallel avatar NFTs, but the price of those nothing happened on those. So I sort of a general fear, not general fear, a general observation is blockchain game projects are great at announcing new things. They can't stop announcing new things. They're all they feel like on Twitter they have to announce collaborations, new blah blah blah. It's just like, okay, that's sort of part of what marketing is. But I think for most things, just the tail wags the dog these days. It's just everyone's running around being very busy doing all these trivial things that don't really focus them on what their main goal can be. And I think over time the problem is that you sort of lose what your main goal is, and you're always running around focusing on sort of new shiny thing, because that's sort of what drives, say, token sentiment is driven by sort of like shiny new things. But fundamentally for this stuff to work, it has to be driven by people actually producing stuff that people want to spend 1,000 hours playing and $1,000. And I'm not quite sure. Well, I'm pretty sure that Tau Ceti is not going to be that.
Well, as you pointed out kind of many times before, is that many of these blockchain game developers are not actually, they don't come from game development in the first place. So if you compare it to, say, like CCP Games, and how they do marketing and announce things, and they actually have long periods of being very quiet and no one really knows what's going on. They don't feel the pressure of constantly having to roll out new things and spend the time on, say, Twitter marketing and social farming and that sort of thing. So in a sense, I think sort of what was starting to sort of transpire is that the projects who are very loud and busy with their marketing, it actually taints their marketing in sort of the longer term, if you know what I mean. Sort of, it makes it come across as a bit desperate, and like, are you actually working on the main thing here? Or
well, I mean, for a very sort of trivial personal thing, it's there are some blockchain games that I'm really interested in, and I just have to mute them on Twitter because it's just like every few hours there's some blur rubbish going. Just like, if there's something important going on, I want to know about it, but I don't want to know about your CEO just had a really nice coffee or something. I'm just taking off. I'm taking off to go to Singapore for wherever it is. Token, blah blah blah. I'm in the plane now. I've got Wi-Fi in the plane, so I'm going to tweet out from the plane. I've landed. I'm in the taxi. And it's like,
coffee. The coffee is better here than.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
You're right.
But
all right. Okay. Well, don't want to be too negative. So let's have on that note. Right. Thank you very much for listening to our waffling on again. See you all next week. Bye.
Bye.